Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. And this is Ireland from the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry by Albert G. Mackey. Ireland. The early history of Freemasonry in Ireland is involved in the deepest obscurity. It is vain to look in Anderson, in Preston, Smith, or any other English writer of the last century for any account of the organization of lodges in that kingdom anterior to the establishment of a Grand Lodge. In none of the published registers is there any reference to an Irish lodge. The late Brother Michael Fennell, Provincial Grand Master of Munster, says in a calendar published by him in 1850 that there are irrefutable records and data which show the existence of several self-designated Grand Lodges in past centuries, and that Lodge number 1 on the present registry claims an uninterrupted descent from an independent lodge which existed from time immemorial and retains many quaint documents in her archives. But I fear that the evidence intended to support these assertions is not such as would now satisfy any student of Masonic history. The statement in the Irish Book of Constitutions, first edition anno 1730, that about 370 years before the birth of Christ, the 4 sons of Milesius the Spaniard subdued the kingdom, settled themselves in several parts of it, planted colonies and erected lodges, is of course utterly fabulous and mythical. The list of curious and stately buildings erected by Masons at various periods only proves the existence of operative Masons there as in other countries of Europe. Fennell says that the books of the Provincial Grand Lodge of Munster show that that body was in existence in 1726, and that the Honourable Colonel James O'Brien was Grand Master. I should be inclined, had I no other authority than conjecture, to place credence in this statement, notwithstanding the doubt of Findel, because we find no official documents to confirm the report. This might be properly attributed to the well-known scantiness and inaccuracy of the records of that period. And indeed, in 1869, Brummer W.J. Hewen, in a communication to the London Freemason, says, "Bro J.G. Findel wrote me sometime since respecting the Grand Lodge of Munster, and stated there were some valuable papers consisting of records of its transactions in the possession of a brother in Ireland of about 1726 to 1729. So that the German historian may have seen cause to modify to some extent his opinion expressed in 1865. This Provincial Grand Lodge is the only organized body of Masons in Ireland of which we hear until 1730, and its existence has now been clearly established as an historical fact by the testimony of that distinguished Irish Mason, Dr. J.F. Townsend, who, in a letter to Brothers Albert Pike, writes as follows: "The earliest records written that I am aware of are the transactions of what appeared to be then the head or governing body in Ireland, called the Grand Lodge of Munster, as it is on the old seal. This body was established in Cork. The date of the earliest entry is 1721. It is a record of a lodge meeting and is signed by the Earl of Kingston GM, and what may be interesting to you, by Springett Penn as Deputy Grand Master. This Penn was the eldest son of the celebrated William Penn. I find that William Penn married the daughter of Sir William Springett, an English baronet, hence the name of his son. Penn got grants of considerable property in lands in the county of Cork, which are now vested in his descendant, a young man, Penn Gaskell. He is a member of No. 1 Lodge, Cork, and was much gratified when I showed him Springett Penn's signature and told him what I now write. In a few years after, this lodge or Grand Lodge was, as was natural, transferred to Dublin, the metropolis, and then commenced the issuing of warrants according to the Grand Lodge system established in or about 1717. No. 1 warrant was granted to Cork, and it is still there, a flourishing blue lodge, very proud of its ancient charter. I've been always a member of it, and am still, as many of my family had been for a century back. No. 2 granted to Dublin, No. 3 to Cork, No. 4 to Dublin, and so on. The Provincial Grand Lodge of Munster seems to be the successor of that old body. I was Provincial Grand Master for many years before I came to reside in Dublin. It holds the ancient records still. In the year 1730, a Grand Lodge was organized, by whom it is not stated, at Dublin. The brief account of this event in the Irish Book of Constitutions is in these words: "At last the ancient fraternity of the free and accepted Masons in Ireland, being duly assembled in their Grand Lodge at Dublin, chose a noble Grand Master, in imitation of their brethren." The Grand Master so chosen was Lord Viscount Kingston, who the year preceding had been Grand Master of England. He introduced the English constitutions and usages, and in the same year, the constitutions of the Freemasons, containing the history, charges, regulations, etc. of that most ancient and right worshipful fraternity, for the use of the lodges, was published at Dublin. A second edition was published in 1744 and a third in 1751. In 1749, the Grand Master's Lodge was instituted, which still exists. A singular institution possessing several unusual privileges, among which are that its members are members of the Grand Lodge without the payment of dues, that the lodge takes precedence of all other lodges, and that any candidates nominated by the Grand Master are to be initiated without ballot. In 1772, the Grand Lodge of Ireland recognized the schismatic Grand Lodge of Ancient Masons and entered into an alliance with it, which was also done in the same year by the Grand Lodge of Scotland. This does not appear to have given any offense to the regular Grand Lodge of England, for when that body, in 1777, passed a vote of censure on the lodges of Ancient Masons, it specially accepted from the censure the lodges of Ireland and Scotland. In 1779, an application was made to the Mother Kilwinning Lodge of Scotland by certain brethren in Dublin for a charter empowering them to form a lodge to be called the High Knights Templars, that they might confer the Templar degree. The Kilwinning Lodge granted the petition for the 3 craft degrees only, but at a later period this lodge became, says Findle, the source of the Grand Encampment of Ireland. To Brother Townsend's interesting letter am I indebted for an account of the working system in Ireland. The Grand Lodge holds jurisdiction over all the Blue Lodges. The Duke of Leinster, who has been Grand Master for 60 years, having been elected in 1813, is also head of all the degrees worked in Ireland. The Mark degree is worked under the Grand Royal Arch chapter. Next comes the Royal Arch, which formerly consisted of 3 degrees: the Excellent, Super Excellent, and Royal Arch, the first 2 being nothing more than passing the first 2 veils, with each a separate obligation. But that system was abolished some years ago, and a new ritual framed something like the American, except that the king, and not the high priest, is made the presiding officer. The next degrees are the 15th, 16th, and 17th, which are under the jurisdiction of the Templar Grand Conclave, and are given to the candidate previous to his being created a Knight Templar. Some change will here have now to be made in consequence of the recent alliance of the Templars of England and Ireland, and their abolition of connection with all Masonry except the craft degrees. Next to the Templar degree in the Irish system comes the 18th or Rose Croix, which is under the jurisdiction of the Grand Chapter of Prince Masons or Council of Rights, composed of the first 3 officers of all the Rose Croix chapters, the Supreme Council having some years ago surrendered its authority over the degree. The 28th degree, or Knight of the Sun, is the next conferred, and then the 30th, or Kadosh, in a body over which the Supreme Council has no control except to grant certificates to its members. The Supreme Council confers the 31st, 32nd, and 33rd degrees, there being no Grand Consistory. The Supreme Council of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite for Ireland was established by a patent from the Supreme Council of the United States at Charleston, dated August 13, 1824, by which the Duke of Leinster, John Fowler, and Thomas McGill were constituted a Supreme Council for Ireland, and under that authority it continues to work. Whence the high degrees came into Ireland is not clearly known. Brother Townsend says they came by piecemeal in a disjointed, irregular way. The Rose Croix and Kadosh degrees existed in Ireland long before the establishment of the Supreme Council. I have in my library a copy of Dalco's Orations, republished at Dublin in 1808, by the illustrious College of Knights of K.H. and the original chapter of Prince Masons. It is probable that these degrees were received from Bristol, England, where are preserved the earliest English records of the Rose Croix. The Grand Lodge of Ireland practices the simplest form of Masonry, that of the York Rite, which with its constitutions it received in 1730 from England. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment, and if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.